Hello, everyone. So um, I just wanted to take a moment to welcome you all to the 106th Assembly of the American Ethical Union. This is the sort of kickoff event of the Assembly, and I am thrilled about tonight's speaker and about the really incredible array of programs that the hardworking Assembly Committee has put together for us to enjoy over the next 2 months. That is really all I had to say. I want to leave as much time as possible for our speaker, so I'm going to pass this on over to Bart.
Okay. Very nice. Thank you, Sonia. And welcome everyone to the keynote event for the 106th Assembly of the American Ethical Union. The American Ethical Union, we usually refer to ourselves as the AEU. We are a federation of groups of ethical societies in the United States. We began with 4 groups in 1889, sorry, more than 100 years ago. And now we have 23 and close to 2,000 individuals as members of our societies. We all aim to create, nurture, and inspire ethical humanist communities and to foster a world that is democratic, compassionate, just, and sustainable. We're a humanist movement focusing on human goodness and building ethical relationships with each other and with the earth. As a non-theistic organization, we do not concern ourselves with the existence or non-existence of a deity, but instead embrace the diversity of humanity and of life. And tonight begins a 2-month-long series of events. We'll have the keynote tonight with Egberto Willies, 11 educational presentations, 8 pre-business meeting sessions, 2 award ceremonies, the culminating Assembly business meeting on August 7th, and an all-society platform on Sunday, August 8th. And as Sonia said, there are a lot of people that have been working on this for a long time. And the Assembly Committee people, I think, would really love to hear your thanks when you get the chance. I also want to make special point of mentioning that we now have Anna Orcutt-Johns with us as our full-time program support and communications person. And she has been doing great work in getting these things prepared and getting all our communications out. So a shout out to Anna, and really so happy that she is aboard with us. And so now, without further ado, I'd like to turn things over to Randy Best, who will provide the introductions for tonight's guests. Randy, over to you. Where are you, Randy? Place spotlight.
Thank you, Bart. Before getting to our keynote address, well, first of all, good evening. I'm Randy Best, and I'm the leader of the Northern Virginia Ethical Society and a member of the AAU Assembly Committee, and it's great to be here this evening. Before getting to our keynote address, let me introduce the musical duo for this evening, A Different Thread, which is composed of Alicia Best and Robert Jackson, and they will provide some music to start us off, and then I will introduce the speaker this evening, Egberto, briefly, and then we'll let him take it away. So,
thanks, Randy.
Egberto Willies is a political activist, author, political blogger, and radio show host. Egberto left the software company he founded to pursue political activism. He launched the radio media program, Politics Done Right, with the goal of discussing political flashpoints from a progressive point of view. Originally from Panama, Egberto left to attend college in a small Texas town. He initially experienced America as an outsider. This vantage point allowed him to see America with fresh eyes. American habits and institutions were once new to him. Nowadays, not so much. Upon transferring to UT Austin, Egberto told of his experience in his book, It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Friends and Neighbors. He wrote, both students and professors in many instances went out of their way to remind me that I was an other. Egberto encountered American racism and how expectations are based on the color of your skin. When encountering differences of opinion with others, Egberto made a conscious choice to lean in. He included this passage in his book, It's Worth It. How one ultimately resolves their interactions with others is generally predicated by past experiences. Some either decide to always stay in a place of comfort, others explore. I explore. Exploring human connection across differences is a lifelong enterprise for Egberto. Through involvement with the coffee party and insightful commentary on his program, Politics Done Right, Egberto listens deeply to others, articulates his progressive values, and plants the seeds of change. Please join me in welcoming the keynote speaker for the 106th American Ethical Union's Annual Assembly, Egberto Willies, whose topic is Empowering Us All Makes Our Demands Undeniable and Attainable. Egberto?
First of all, I want to thank you. I want to thank your organization, American Ethical Union, for having me. It was after learning about you and after reading about what you represented, I have to say that I was more than elated, because it was like finding a group of folk who really thought, I don't want to say the same way that I thought, but actually had those values of had those human values that was willing to engage, which is all that I stand for. So first of all, I want to thank you, first of all, for the things that you said about me, but I want to talk a little bit more about myself, because I think it is important for one to understand who you are, to understand why you feel the way you do, why you say the things that you do, why you act the way that you do. I grew up in the small country of Panama. Panama is an isthmus. It has several parts as well. It has several different kinds of cultures within that community itself. My forefathers came from Jamaica and other Caribbean islands to build a canal in Panama. Most of those Caribbean folks, the Black folks in Panama, there are two kinds of Black folks in Panama: the costeños, which are the ones that were under the Spanish rule, and then there were the Caribbean ones that came from the islands. I am from the Caribbean ones that came to the island. As we assimilated, we all became Afro-Latinos. In other words, we were Black folk who spoke Spanish. Some of us decided that we wanted to take those good jobs that the Americans offered. It was below what Americans gave. I mean, below what Americans earned in Panama, because they got something called a differential, but it was way above what you would make in Panama. So some of us became a bit special as we got those special jobs with the United States. And with that came a whole lot of privileges for Panamanians in Panama over Panamanians. So that is kind of where you start to learn a few things. I went to school in both Spanish and English. Our classes were actually really bilingual. I learned chemistry in Spanish. I learned civics in Spanish. I learned physics in English. So that is the kind of schooling that we went. And that's the reason why I speak English like an American, well, like a Caribbean person, and Spanish like somebody from Colon. That's a part of Panama where I'm from. Now, when those of us who live in Panama, we looked at the United States as that bastion of democracy, because that is what the United States sells. If you go any part of the world, what the United States sell is the bastion of democracy, and we believe it, and we all came here the best way we could, though, especially those of us that grew up in those both worlds. We came here and we expected democracy, and for the most part, I would say when I just got here, we found it. When I came, though, it was interesting, because I came to the States walking with, and we were in Brenham, Texas, a very small town. And I'm walking with my other friends from Central and South America. And as you know, like I said, in this part of the world, we're pretty mixed up, all that good stuff. And then we're walking down the street and we had an Argentinian girl, white, blue-eyed girl, another sort of Indian looking, and, all of us walking down. And the first thing I heard walking down Brenham is something to the effect of, "Hey, nigger, you're in the wrong part of town." And that was that was likely the first week. I knew what it meant, but my friends didn't. And so we went back to school, but that was the sort of introduction that I got. Did that have an effect on me? I grew up pretty headstrong based on the parents that I had. I had parents that ensured that things that people said to you didn't have much effect. And in as much as something may have burned for a while, it was not long lasting. So I came here and I understood that. At Blinn, I had no problems. At the college, I still believed in what America represented. Every place has its problem. Every country has its problem. I don't care where you're at. After being in Brenham for a year, I decided to give up that music scholarship that I was on. I actually came to the United States on a music scholarship. That was how I was able to pay. So I was on a music scholarship doing engineering at Blinn College, kind of different. But I then migrated after the first year to the University of Texas. And immediately I was always an activist, even back in Panama. It's like, why are we allowing this to happen, etc. And I went to the University of Texas. And at the University of Texas, I joined the South African Liberation Action Committee. And that the pretense behind that is that we wanted to ensure that the University of Texas would not be investing in apartheid South Africa with the billions of dollars that we commanded with that university. So we marched on campus, etc., etc., etc. And at that point, I was in a church called Maranatha Christian Center. I never forgot it. As an activist, I then I played the guitar for the church, and we had fun in the church, and we were all God-loving people, all that good stuff, Bible thumping, reading, And I went to the pastor and I said, "Hey, we are marching on campus to get the University of Texas to divest from South Africa." And the pastor said, "We don't do that." And I said, "Why not? Come on now. Jesus was a radical man. He would have, this man walked on water and he did all these kind of stuff. He would have done that." And this guy said, "Oh, we don't do that." And he said, "By the way, Egberto, do you know that Jesus never spoke out against slavery?" And I said, "Oh, really? I didn't quite remember that. I was a Christian back home, and we never really talk about stuff like that." But he forced me to read the whole darn New Testament, and I did. And by God, the guy was right. And that's when I became a humanist. That's when I gave up on religion, and that's when that's when I gave up on religion. Anyhow, at that point, I still went on with my activism, got my degree in college, and then I started to work for different organizations. I started at the oil companies, and I went to work for NASA and a few other places that I worked for. And at that time, I was still doing a lot of blogging as an activist. In those days, it wasn't called blogging. Some of you may be too young to remember things like CompuServe and these other things where you could write these different things politically. That's where I engaged. Even AOL was a little bit before that time. So that's what I did. And as time progressed, and the first time blogging started, the first time there was a website, when the guy from Holland or whatever designed hypertext, I was out there with my website politically under a pseudonym because I worked for corporate America. So I always knew how to work within a system to try to get some of your money, your point across. After leaving NASA, I formed a software company, and I formed a software company because it was just time, and I worked it for a long time, and I also continued blogging and doing all these things on the side, but anonymously, until my daughter got out of high school. When my daughter left high school, it was open season, meaning I didn't have to hide anymore. So when I didn't have to hide, I started a program called Liberal Politics Done Right. Well, after joining the Coffee Party, which is really we call it a transpartisan organization because we wanted to reach everybody. And I must say that the Coffee Party was instrumental. The Coffee Party was instrumental in mellowing me out into a manner that said we should be engaging with everybody, no matter what you think of that person. So I will engage with an anarchist. I will engage with a KKK person, which I have. I would engage with militia folk. I will engage with anybody civilly and try to have a conversation to move what we believe in forward. So after I started that internet radio show called Liberal Politics Done Right. After I joined the Coffee Party, I changed it to just Politics Done Right. And the reason why is to ensure that I didn't alienate any particular person who's scanning something. And believe it or not, it was also supposed to be a bit tricky, right? Politics done right. Do I mean on the right side of the spectrum or politics done correctly? You know, nobody really knows. So I get a lot of people that kind of test and try to show anyway. And so we did that. After doing that for some time, I made a proposal to KPFT 90.1 FM Houston, Pacifica Network. I think many of you may know of the Pacifica Network set of stations around the country. And they picked it up and liked the concept. So I've been doing it at KPFT since then. During the healthcare debate, though, that is when, and the title of what I want to talk about today is empowering us all to make our demands undeniable and attainable. And the reason I said that is too often what we think is that we are one person and that we can't make a difference. And my goal in life after I gave up my software companies and gave up corporate America and everything else. And by the way, I am not telling anybody that working for corporate America or anything like that is wrong, but I'm just saying what I did. I decided that I would really fully engage. So during the healthcare debate, I remember getting very upset. We weren't really addressing issues as we should. And I felt impotent, completely impotent, like many people feel when you go talking about politics to folks. Very, very impotent. So I sat down in a Starbucks and in 2 months came out with my first book called As I See It, Class Warfare, the Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. Of course, I got into a bit of trouble with the Coffee Party because they thought the name of the book was a bit too maybe racy, but they you know, when reading the book, it wasn't at all a war. It was really, these are how things are, and that we are in really a class, we're really in a class war. So I came out with that book because I wanted to show how all of those things integrated themselves. Again, the reason I start talking about the biography at first, or a little bit about myself as first, is you can see the migration, you can see exactly where I'm coming from. The first piece now that I wrote for Coffee Party USA was a piece called Americans Held Hostage. And the reason I wrote that is I feel, and I think we all live, however we try to take it, in effect, we're all hostages, right? We are pinned down to doing certain things a certain way. We have been indoctrinated to believe that things must operate the way they operate right now. We must believe that you get up at 8 in the mornings or whatever time you get up and you go to work, you do something for somebody else and you come home. And that's how the majority of us live our lives, because that's just how we were programmed. I told a group on a program once that we are all, you know, at first in America, what we had was slavery, but our economic system taught a much better lesson. And that lesson was, why put people in chains when we can have virtual chains by controlling their minds? And if I have control of your mind, I don't really need chains, because I can do as I please. And that is where, since I came to the United States in 1979, and in as much as we have been indoctrinated for some time into the belief that we were exceptional, we were indoctrinated into believing that everything that we did was the correct way to do it. It was okay because we were all surviving. We were all surviving. But the thing about the type of economic system that we have is the corrosive nature of it means that eventually we start to eat our own. And when we start to eat our own, we have to start finding a boogeyman. And that boogeyman, as we approach that on Stable's part of where this economic system takes us, we get the person who starts to define the boogeyman. Everybody thinks that Donald Trump was some sort of a anomaly. Everybody thinks, oh, where did he come from? What is he showing some scars, or what is he really doing? Yes, he's showing some scars, but the scars are not within the American people. I just left DC with my daughter who had a stroke. And we were talking about people, and she likes to be independent, and she doesn't like to ask for a lot of help. And I said, you have to ask for help, and you have to ask people to do things and help out, because we are a community. And I said, most people are good. And she said, Dad, that's not really true. And I'm like, yeah. I went out during the Tea Party days to a rinky-dinky bar in the west part of Houston, where there are some crazy looking, supposedly rednecks. And by the time we were done, I didn't say that we cured whatever isms they had, but we were able to connect on a human basis. And what we find is what changes us are those externalities that forces us to use the parts of our brains we should have outgrown long time ago. That animal part of our brain that isn't the logical thinking part of our brain that have us believing that somehow race means something, as if there is really a race. Now, I've had to work within the race domain for some time, but I've never copped to race. In other words, I don't believe in the social construct. Well, I know it's a social construct. I don't believe in the biological construct, because the biological construct is false. The biological construct was created by an economic system that needs it. And in the piece, as I prepared for what I was going to talk about today, I had a little phrase. And I'm always cognizant to the people that are listening to me, because I don't like too often for words to cloud what we're really trying to say. But in this case, I'm going to make an exception where I say racism is an antidote to racism as antidote to capitalism's failure. And what do I mean by that? We know that our economic system, from a mathematical standpoint, is unsustainable. You can't have infinite growth. You can't have all these things that we claim. If you listen to CNBC, you're listening to a whole bunch of crap. You're listening to legalized gambling, where the mathematicians who created things like derivatives and created things like credit default swaps never knew what they were talking about. They used mathematical formulas based on something that mathematical formulas didn't apply to, but they did. And in the process of doing that, they accelerated a failure that was bound to happen irrespective. So we got failure. And our failure was really not easily recoverable. Obama supposedly bring this, you know, we got out of that semi-failure, but we never really did. Dr. Richard Wolff, the economist, a well-known economist, came out and said it was easy what they did, right? They inflated our system. They gave infinite credit, and they gave you the semblance of prosperity or the semblance of a recovery. And in the process of doing that, what did they do? They created a system that was ready for a bigger demise. And henceforth comes Donald Trump understanding what we're not him understanding, but the people that's backing him understanding where we were going and where is it that we were going. You know, we had to find a boogeyman. And when he came down those stairs and he said Mexicans were rapists, killers, and everything else, he knew what he was doing. When he started to create this racial angst in this country, he knew what he was doing. What he was doing is ensuring that people would keep their eyes off of the ball. If you are looking at the other as the reason why 80% of the people in this country cannot have $1,000, if they have $1,000 bill, they're finished. If you want to make sure that they don't come for the real boogeyman, create one. So those dark people are your problem. They want everything for free. Those people that come in over the border, they're going to take your jobs. You know, those other folks, they're going to burn your stuff down. So if you look at right-wing radio stations and television stations right now, what you find is you find a system that is you know, completely anathema to what's reality. So that was a necessary thing for what I always talk about, our plutocracy to create. You know, we were led to believe that the wealthy were special people. And when I talk about wealthy, I know we probably have a few millionaires on the show right now, on the program right now. And for the millionaires on here, I'm not talking about you. That is not you at all. For the guy who owns a place with 100 employees, I'm not talking about you. For the person who owns a bakery, a donut shop, who owns a grocery store, I'm not talking about you. But the plutocracy, the Trumps, and these guys want you to believe that when we're talking about equity, that we're somehow talking about taking away what you have earned, but you have earned it. But the real wealth in this country are things that we don't know how to describe and we don't really see. And those are the folks that I consider the parasites of our society and the ones that we have to take back what they have given or what they had taken on the backs of everybody else. Are you an engineer? Are you a teacher? Are you a doctor? Are you a lawyer? Your services are invaluable. Are you a garbage collector? Do you sweep the floors? Do you clean up the mess at daycares? Your value to society is immeasurable. But those are not the people who are the real wealthy, who are the ones who control this country. Those are not the ones who are getting the spoils of this country. You know, many of us look at Bill Gates and we love Bill Gates because he's given all his money away. And we love Jeff Bezos because Jeff Bezos, I mean, he is great. He amassed 160 something or $200 billion. Whose money is that? Whose money is that? Where did that money come? Was Jeff Bezos so intelligent that he was deserving of $200 billion? Or is that a piece of the action of the several 100,000 people who work for Jeff Bezos not being paid? Bill Gates bought MS-DOS as CPM and some other permutations derived from a Seattle company for $50,000. He had capital. He had something to work with. He picked that up and he was smart. He didn't sell the software to IBM. He licensed it. So he got a piece of IBM's action. You know, it's a different economic system that doesn't value work, worth, or service. It values capital. How can you use what you've got to make more on the backs of others? Oprah Winfrey, they love Oprah Winfrey. I used to love, I mean, I don't, look, these guys are playing very well. They are playing the game as it was designed. So you don't hate them, you dislike the game. And how do you change the game? That is what I'm going to talk about, empowering. You know, they are the game. They're playing the game and they play the game well. And you know what? Everybody that's listening right here, if they wanted to, could play that game. They have the wherewithal to play that game. But remember what I said, I told my daughter, most people are good. Most people don't think they need $1 billion to live well. Most people don't think they need $10 million to live well. Most people, after they reach a certain point, they say, okay, I've got enough. Let me go on to the next thing and whatever. But there's a pathology with a very small, you ever wondered why the 0.1% of the people are like that? That's because the 0.1% have a pathological problem. It's hard to say, but it is true. Just look at, ask, if you ever doubt it, ask all the billionaires we know, from musicians to politicians to all these others, how many of them want a tax increase to really have a good redistribution? Oh, but I got the redistribution a bit too early. I'm still with meritocracy. Meritocracy really means that if you are good at what you do, that you will merit from what you're able to do no matter what. And the truth of the matter is, I go to church, or I don't go to church, but in going to church, right? You see all these great singers. You know, they're meritorious of having music contracts, but they're not chosen. You have to be chosen. And that's a dirty little secret of our system, right? Everybody think if you merit, you go to college and you do all the things right, you're going to be just fine. Nobody ever tells you about, you know, we always talk about the NFL, you know, all those kids in all those kids that are playing baseball and in high school and college, or playing football in high school and college. They should pick something else, because, you know, only 1% of you or less are going to make it into the NFL. But they forgot to tell you that about college too, right? They forgot to tell you that about a whole lot of other things, that, you know, you go to college for one thing and you end up doing something else. And I mean, they forget to tell you that you have to be chosen for what you really want to be. If you are meritorious of that, you have to be chosen. That's our system. That is our system. So Bill Gates, he had the capital, but he was chosen. Jeff Bezos had the capital, was chosen. His father loaned him $300,000 and he was chosen there. There's a little story I tell all the time, right? I'm a software developer, and when it was coming out, things were just starting. And I thought about this stuff about selling products online. And I was going to create this piece, this cart that you click on the button and you sell something. And we started to do patent searches. I didn't know you had to do patent search for software, but apparently you did, because Jeff Bezos, Amazon, owned the one-click patent, which means all of us who had a great idea that was no real great idea at all couldn't use that no great idea because somebody else was using it, which meant I wanted to sell a piece of software for a couple $100 a pop, and I couldn't do it because Bezos owned the license to the thing. So what I'm trying to say, meritorious doesn't really mean success. Oprah Winfrey, several $1 billion. What about the engineer who built the camera? What about the person who built the microphone? What about the person who built the videotape, the satellites, and all those things that affords her the ability to make billions? You see, we don't think that way, right? We don't think that everybody plays a part in the success of all these others. You know, I remember when I started developing software, and I developed a piece of software for Microsoft that made the serial port do something magic, and I thought it was worth all that. And then I sat back down and I said, you know what, though, but think about on how many people's back. The guy who designed the microprocessor that, yes, I'm programming the microprocessor, but hell, he designed it and he doesn't even know what I'm doing with it, and making money off of what he did. We have an economic system that doesn't reward those who make things. Every one of you that are listening to me right now, are doing some sort of a job, and somebody else is building something off of what you did, and others off of what somebody else did. And what our economic system teaches is that last person, that person who can capitalize what you did, is the one who gets rich, and all the people who produced everything else. So long, good luck. That's what it's all about. So I want to thank Randy for talking about some of the issues that I spoke about in my book, It's Worth It, because one of the things that I really wanted to say is that our biggest problem is that we don't talk to each other and exchange ideas as we should, and respect each other as we should, so that all these different ideas and ways of thinking will come out, or would come out. If we did, the control that the system, and I always talk about the system, has on us would be that much less effective. But because we all are designed, or we are all placed in our own little silos, and these silos are class-based, race-based, gender-based, and all these other little silos, and folks think that there's some reason why they shouldn't communicate, or some reason why the other one hates the other, they are able to maintain the power over us. So my goal in life is not to do that. It's to say, let's be self-empowering. How do we become self-empowering? We talk to each other. We forget about our own biases. We all have biases. You know, the isms doesn't, look, I always tell people, right? Nobody has a monopoly on evil. Nobody has a monopoly on goodness. Nobody has a monopoly on anything. I don't care who you are, race or otherwise. We have been constructed a certain way from our inception as a country, and we have been living through that indoctrination ever since. And if we ever decide to give it up, which I think we will in the long run, that country that we want to be exceptional would be exceptional. And how do we become exceptional? We pick up things that other people do. The redistribution of wealth. People hate to hear that word, redistribution, as if it means that people haven't earned what they're about to give. No. We talk about childcare. We talk about Medicare for all. We talk about basic income, meaning everybody has a right to have a starting living income. We talk about bifurcated economies, where there are certain parts of our economy that does not belong in the public sector, and certain parts that doesn't belong in the private sector. And right now, it is all a whack. What is healthcare doing in the private sector? Are we somehow ever going to be able to, should we ever want to hurt somebody if they get ill? I don't think so. So ultimately, and I'm coming to my close in stating that I think we can become that exceptional country with empowerment. And empowerment means removing the chains from our minds. Empowerment means removing the indoctrination that have been placed in us since our inception. I mean, it started from us being a country based on capital first. The first thing we ever ask, if you ask about a tax plan, how is that going to affect business? If we ask about a health plan, how is that going to affect business? If we ask about everything, it's how is it going to affect business? We never first ask, how does it affect human beings first? Empowerment means asking that question. How does it affect us all first? And after we've determined that, we create a system in which we come first. And it's not impossible because there are brands of it in many countries, not perfect, but many countries have tried that empowerment. And if we did that, we would first elect the people that would make it a reality and put it through. So with that, thank you so kindly.
Thank you so much, Egberto. Before the Q&As, so people can put Q&As into the Q&As. And before we do that, though, I want to give a different thread another shot at giving us some music. So I'm going to pass it over to Alicia Best and Robert Jackson, a different thread.
Thank you so much. We're going to try this again. This song is called Carolina Song, and I wrote it when I was actually here in England when a statue of a soldier in gray that had been in front of the courthouse in Durham, North Carolina for a very long time. Well, not as long as some people might think. I think since like the 50s. Was toppled by some protesters, and I saw so many friends of mine in the crowd, and I saw the way the statue just crumpled as it was pulled down. And then I took note that the pedestal that it had been standing on with the inscription was there for a couple of years after, and they've actually taken it down since then, but this song was written before they did. And it's I do think that those statues don't belong out and about, and that there are other things for us to do with them, including toppling them. So this is Carolina Song. I hear they put a new light up by the Kraken on 54. I'm back in North Carolina, it don't feel like home. I don't wanna be living in the past. Seems the past is catching up. They say times are changing. They say time heals all wounds. I've got these ghosts and change can't come too soon. Carolina, come too soon. They built up the city skyline, but we're not learning. It wasn't long ago we saw the crosses burning. Sure, I wanna say that we've come a long way, but we got a lot of catching up. They say times are changing. They say time heals all wounds. I've got these ghosts and change can't come too soon. Carolina, just like James, I hear the highway calling me. I know
You say it's history, but sure seems to me that history is catching up. They say times are changing. They say time heals all wounds. But I've got these goals. Change can come too soon. Carolina, come to. Oh, Carolina. Oh, Carolina.
Thank you so much, and thanks to Egberto for a really great talk. I look forward to the questions.
Okay, we've got affirmative comments, but it would be great if someone had a question for Egberto. If so, type it into the Q&A that's at the bottom of your screen. If not, well, while that is happening, I will throw a question at Egberto now. Egberto, I mean, you're positioned in a good way to, through your show and things, to reach across political divides and political barriers. But a lot of us are facing it in a more sort of up close and personal within our families. Sometimes we have political polarization that can make dialogue difficult. And just if you have some suggestions or pointers that you might share with us on how to crack that and how to listen better to each other and communicate better, I think that would be great.
I have a story for you, a quick one. And it goes like this. My sister, I have an older sister who is a Trump supporter, okay? And everybody else in the family, we are progressive liberal. She is a church-going evangelical Christian who loves Donald Trump. And I love my sister. I won't let Donald Trump get between my sister and myself. So during the pandemic, I told my sister, I called her up once, and that was during the mask issues. I looked at her and I call her and I speak to her all the time. And we sometimes even tease each other about Trump and other things. And I always try to get a little nudge in as far as, hey, what do you think about this or whatever? But I listen a lot. I listen to why she believes it. And there's a calculated way in which the right wing operates that progressives probably should learn, but that's another subject. What I do as far as making sure that the lines stay open is I called her once and I said, look, I know you don't believe in masks. I know you don't believe in doing these particular things, but I'm your brother. And if let's go under the assumption that you love your brother. Could you please, if you don't want to wear the mask for you, could you wear it for me? And taking a different approach, she stopped for a while. And then she said, okay, Egberto, okay. And so that broke a little bit of, well, I mean, a lot of times, she's a very smart woman, but a lot of times what happens is that people are so wedded to their positions that they need an escape route. And I think as progressives, we can offer many times an escape route so that, and people say, why is it that progressives always have to yield? And the reason why is that they will never yield because they don't have the capacity to see the better good many times. And that may sound crass, but I mean, many of them, the way they are wired, they need that exit ramp. And however we can find a way to give them an exit ramp. And again, that means sometimes being more selfless than one might want to be. But if we want to make the change, somebody has to do that. And that's why I tell my audience sometimes when they give me hell for being too nice to our right. We have a lot of right-wing folks that come in and talk and stay. They come every day. They're there every day, and I entertain them and I'm nice to them, etc. And some of my lefties get pissed at me, and I'll tell them, look, I can take it. You don't have to. I can take it. But if you don't, I mean, I'm not telling you that you need to do it, but don't attack me for doing it.
Okay, thank you. Got a question from Linda Guten, and she says, why do you think billionaires won't give away 80% of their money to save millions of lives? Are we really talking about that deep a hit on the billionaires, or what is the proposal?
Actually, I think Linda has the perfect question. Imagine this, right? Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, Oprah Winfrey, and a few other billionaires could just take a little piece of their monies, a little piece, and build enough factories. We know how to build the factories now, so they are now turnkey, which means it's just like a Ford plant. You can build a factory in 3 months, right? And you can generate any number of billion doses of vaccines. But our economic system prevents us from doing that. They could do that. It never occurred to them that they just go ahead and pool $100 billion if they wanted to and do it. Our government could do that, but the pharmaceutical companies won't allow them to do it because of how we work.
Another question from Anonymous says, say more about the pathology of those who have all the money. It sounds right, but explain.
Well, I mean, look at yourself, right? I look at people many times, and what you find is that you go out with somebody, and that person that is always trying to maximize what they have. You have a conversation with somebody. I go out with people, and there are people who would think, oh, I have enough of something. And then there are those that constantly want more. They don't need it, but they want it. They want it. And you ask why? Why? They can't tell you. They just want it. And that is a certain, I mean, we have a lot of different kind of pathologies, right? I probably have a few pathologies myself, but I mean, we have a lot of, some of them are bad, some of them are good. That one is really, really bad because it actually hurts people really, really bad.
Okay, let's see what else we have here. Would you comment on the future of democratic socialism in America?
Did somebody there know that I was a democratic socialist?
I don't know that they know that. They may have done some research. I'm not sure.
Well, here's the truth. I label myself a democratic socialist for the lack of any other label. I mean, the labels doesn't really mean much, right? I 100% believe in free enterprise. In other words, open your store, make your money, make your profit. If you remember during my talk, I was talking about, I'm not talking about, there are several millionaires probably listening to us right now. I'm not talking about your money. You have a few million in your 401k. I'm not talking about that. You have 10 million in your 401k. I'm not talking about that. That's peanuts compared to what the wealthy really has in this country. And that is why, and the psychology that our media, the psychology that our politicians, which are crooked, many are crooked, use is they make those people who have 10, 20, 30 million dollars believe that we're coming to take that away from them. But that's not who we're after at all. Democratic socialism simply says that we want a society where you heard me talk about bifurcated economies. We want a society where Medicare for all and these types of things that belong in the public sector where there's not a profit motive stays there, and places where you want to build a telephone, you want to make a telephone, and if people want it, they buy it. If they don't, they don't. Free enterprise. You want to go ahead and build a mouse, you want to build a coffee cup, you want to open a restaurant, all of that is in the private sector. But when it comes to the needs, I believe energy, I believe certain levels of food. I believe basic income. There are certain things that humanity demands that I think belong in the public sector. And I am not smart enough to understand all the areas, but I'm pretty sure they can put a whole group of smart people together that can figure out profit is detrimental to your health in this particular area, and profit is not detrimental to your health in this particular area. There are a lot of smart people that can figure that out.
Okay. I would give Sonia and Bart a chance to ask a question if they have something. Putting them on the spot. That didn't work. Okay, well,
I'll go ahead. So I noticed that you're in Texas, and there are, I don't know, one or two things happening in Texas that are probably difficult for people who are politically liberal to stand. So I guess the question about the changes in voting access would be one that I would wonder, what's your take on the best response to what the legislature has been doing?
Well, you know what is interesting, right? When Obama was in office, Obama said something that I think everybody should have listened to, that voter suppression works for about a 1 to 2 percentage points in any election. There are some people you're not going to stop voting. There's nothing you can do that prevent them from voting. They'll learn what they have to do to vote, and they'll go vote, right? But then there's a delta amount of folks that if voting becomes a strain or anything difficult, that's what they won't vote. The thing about the right is there are two things that they do on the right. They scare those poor people so badly that they believe that we liberals, progressives, we're coming to eat their babies. So they are scared to death. These people are genuine. They're not bad people. They're just scared. They are genuinely scared, and they're going to vote because their survival in their minds depend on it. And, progressives are like, you guys crazy. But our nonchalantness, or because we know what we know, that it's crap, we have a tendency to take that for granted. And that's why they quasi-win. And notice I said quasi-win because remember, the Constitution is not a democratic document, right? The Constitution, you have 50 senators, you have 100 senators, and California has 2 and South Dakota has 2. Come on now, that's not a democracy at all. But so as far as the voting in Texas, the good thing about Harris County, which is a bellwether for not only Texas, but for the country, is that we've already identified the people that are going to be that we need to target in 22. If that job gets done, and we are going to be getting a new chair in this county that knows about this stuff, we hope, and we'll make sure to reach those people. What we have to do in Texas, because they can't take away your vote, they can make voting difficult. We have to let them pay the price for making the vote difficult. And I think we can. Sometimes when you try to restrict somebody from doing something, that is when they actually go ahead and do it. And we have to hope that we can do that.
All right. Sonia?
All right, now that I've had a moment to think about it. One question that I have for you is, I got the impression that that you actually think that there is hope for the future of our country, and that perhaps things might change. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your hope.
I'm always hopeful. I never get discouraged. I mean, if I look, let me, I'm gonna tell you a story my wife told me one time. She said, she went out and she was playing with some friends. I think they were playing tennis or something, right? And she was the only Black woman there, right? And there was this white woman that somebody hurt her feelings, right? And it was the end of the world. And they all sat down to, they were eating, they went out to lunch. And the lady was complaining to my wife. And my wife pat her on the back and she said, you know, I think you would have a hard time being Black. And the woman looked at her and like, what do you mean? And then she said, we live that every day of our lives. And a light bulb went off in this woman, right? So I guess the reason I use what she said as an example is that things look bad, right? But it has looked worse for a lot of other people. Like, you know, it was funny because one of the reasons people say, like, why don't some of these people vote? Because things get better for the people at a certain level and above, right? But for some people in this country, things never change, right? So bad doesn't mean bad for you, and doesn't necessarily mean any worse for them. So so what we have to start looking at, and that's when I talk about empowering us all, right? Empowering us all is what get us over the hump. Because if all is empowered, we have enough power to take away. It's this amount of people that are bad in this country. The rest of the people are just misled. And if you had I always call the misled ill, right? If you have a friend that is ill, do you throw them away or do you try to cure them? Do you know, I mean, if you had a friend with a psychological problem and they told you something that hurts your feeling, you use that as the screen with which you measure their words. So if a sane person told you that, it would bite. But when that person that has a few problems tell you that, it comes with a different level of understanding. And that is how I look at it. Is America in bad shape? Yes. Is it irreversible? Hell no. I mean, no. I mean, I think, look, like it is funny because I have people that have, I remember this guy, and I use this a lot because I'm in front of the camera, and this guy calls up and he says, nigger, 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 and he's just, and for me, that don't mean anything, right? For me, it's like, gosh, I guess you're having a bad day, huh? So that is how I looked at it, right? So I looked at him and I said, so what exactly is wrong? Tell me what you really, really want to tell me. And then he's nigga. I said, okay, now tell me what you want to say. Is there something that you want to talk about? And eventually it got to him like, damn. And I got an email from the guy that says, you know, I am sorry, but I was just, you know, I don't know what got into me and whatever, but it made a difference to him that I treated what he was going through as an illness. You know why? It is an illness. Racism is an illness. It's a psychological illness because, you know, as we talk about, it's a social construct. It's a psychological illness. So if I treat those things, racism, the problems that we're going through in this country, which racism is only the tool. Our problem isn't racism. Our problem is what racism is needed to solve. Our economic system is a fraud. We need racism to try to keep it alive. And that's what a lot of people don't get. That's why we had things like redlining and all. You know, you have all these folks these academics that will come out and say a whole lot of things about racism. And some folks don't like what I say because I don't sit down, and I'm not going to sit down and I'm not going to sit down and try to just say, oh, because you're white or because you're Latino or because you're that. X is how we're supposed to look at things. I don't do that because I think if we ever are to solve our problems, one, we have to give people the ability to screw up. And two, we have to be able to get through to people by first having them be willing to talk to you.
All right. Anna or Alicia and Robert, do you have any questions for Egberto?
I do not have questions, but I'm excited to announce that we will be having another song. Yay! I'm glad we're not missing out just because of a technical glitch earlier. And also that if you would like to find out more about a different thread, they have dropped links to their music in the chat. So should we do maybe one more question and then we can go to a song? Would that be okay, Randy?
That sounds perfect. John McCormick wrote, were you surprised by the story in ProPublica regarding billionaires and their taxes?
No, no, not at all. I am just happy that somebody documented it, because I think now that ProPublica has put that out, especially at this time, I think it just could have a difference in the way we talk about the tax situation, about making sure people pay their taxes. So I think it's great.
Okay. Well, Egberto, I want to thank you again for making yourself available this evening and for sharing your wisdom with us and your approach to dialogue and to some of the problems that the country faces, and that through empowering ourselves, we can take action and make change. And that is a positive message that I was so glad to hear.
Thank you so kindly for having me. I'm ecstatic for the work that you guys do. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And now we will close with some music from A Different Thread. So back to you.
Thank you all so much for having us this evening. It's been really lovely to be a part of this. And we look forward to tuning in for some of the other events. This song is a song we wrote at the end of last summer, and it is about pushing through those hard times and with a sense of humor and optimism.
Finding the hope that Egberto was talking about. Thank you so much for your speech today.
It's called Sorrow Brings Me Joy.
And you can find us on Patreon. This song is available through our Patreon.
And there is a video for it on YouTube as well.
Woke up on the wrong side, at least I'm not dead. I saw one magpie for sorrow, maybe I could use some bread. Good morning, Mr. Magpie, how's your wife today? Even sorrow brings me joy. Even if tomorrow brings me the blues today, sorrow brings me joy. Took a walk in the sunshine, when will I learn? Keeping on the sunny side always gets me burned. You're sitting in the shade now, growing weird at me today. Even sorrow brings me joy. Even if tomorrow brings me the blues today, sorrow brings me joy. Devil can't come knocking if we don't have a door. Same goes to fortune, we don't live here anymore. But we've been chasing loose ends and running like a thread today. Even sorrow brings me joy.